Hey there, welcome to the show. This is How to Make Dinner and I'm Paula, and today we're making this really lovely, like 3 to 5 ingredient celery root soup. And I think you're gonna love it, and I think you're gonna be like pretty surprised at how easy and how beautiful it is. Today we're dealing with this guy. This is a celery root, and it kind of has a reputation for being really ugly. I don't really know why. I think it's kind of cool. Looks a bit like an alien, and it also reminds me a bit of Wilson from Castaway after he gets like melted and the straw starts coming out of the top of his head. Anyway, so it is the root of a celery, but the celery that grows from celery root is not the celery that you're used to seeing in the store. It's a different kind of, these are bred for the bulb rather than being bred for the stalks. So as you can see, it's quite gnarly. And if you haven't worked with these before, it's kind of like, you got to work through a lot of stuff to get to the good stuff on the inside. So today we're just going to make this very simple celery root soup. And it's probably my favorite way to have it. First, I'm just going to chop an onion before I get into that guy, because we want the onion in the pot first. There's a million things you can do with celery root. You can roast them. You can do celery root fries, which it's cool. I don't know. For some reason, I just like soup. I just like doing a very simple soup or a mash. So with a mash, it's basically just like cooking them like you would mashed potatoes. Just steam them or boil them in salted water and then use like a food processor to puree them. You don't want to use a potato masher because they're not as soft as potatoes, so they'll just be really chunky. But yeah, it's great. It's very non-intimidating. I think a lot of people are intimidated by celery root, but you basically just treat it the same way you do any root vegetable. So that's like boil it, steam it, roast it, blend it into a soup. Today we're blending it into a soup. So I'm going to hack up this onion pretty roughly. I have a pan preheating, or a crock pot, a Dutch oven preheating behind me. And this is just one onion. It's a 1-to-1 ratio of onion to celery root. And just drop some olive oil in here. And then I'll chuck my onion in. Now, while that's happening, I can attack this thing. So it's pretty straightforward. Basically, you just cut a lot more than you think. You don't want to try doing this with a potato peeler because it'll take you all day. There's actually a line on the inside that's kind of like an indicator of the tough part. So you actually want to cut all of that away, like just all the way up to the line. So I start by cutting off the top and then the bottom so that I have a steady, flat surface to deal with. And now I'm flat, and now I can just go around and around, cutting to sort of that line. And celery root does go brown. If it's kind of like an apple, it'll go brown if you leave it out to the air too long. So you just kind of want to work fairly quickly. And it's a really good for you thing. It's not starchy like a potato. It does have a very distinct celery flavor, but there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know if you know much about me, but I'm a celery lover through and through. My braised celery video is doing much better than I really expected it to on YouTube. For some reason, everyone wants the braised celery, which is kind of cool. So I'm gonna cut this into some chunks. Nothing too fancy here. Just cut them in however big of chunks you want based on how long you're willing to wait for them to be cooked. So if you want them to be cooked faster, if you're in a hurry, cut them smaller. If you don't really care, then just leave them big. I should let you know too, if you see celeriac, it's the same thing. Celery root, celeriac, they often call it celeriac in Britain, but it's often called celery root here. Same. So the onions are a little soft and the celery root can go in. Next up is some salt, like about a teaspoon. I always like to start with, I feel like a teaspoon of salt is pretty much my baseline for any soup, because I know I'm making like a significant amount, and any less than a teaspoon is just not going to do anything. So once the onions and the celery root are both in the pot, I'm just going to top up the whole thing with some chicken stock. You can definitely use vegetable stock or water. Nothing wrong with that. And this is like, you can see how simple this is. This is 3 ingredients so far, plus salt and olive oil, which don't really count, right? Right? I think olive oil and salt are gimmies. Okay, so that 1 liter of stock was exactly the right amount, or 900 mils, to just barely cover everything. So I'm gonna turn up the heat to high, bring it to a boil. So before I put the lid on, I'm going to throw in a few bay leaves. 2 big guys, that's nice. Maybe 3. Because there's not a lot flavor-wise going on in here, I think 3 bay leaves is good. And I'm just gonna hang out while this comes to a boil, and then once it does, I'm gonna put the lid on and turn the heat down and just let it simmer until the celery root is soft, which is gonna take about 10 minutes. All right, we're back, and the soup has been simmering for about 10, maybe 12 minutes. So now I'm gonna fish out the bay leaves. So easy when you're doing a celery root soup and not like a spinach soup. It's really hard to find bay leaves sometimes in a green soup. Blending, you can blend it in a high-powered blender like I have. You can use a stick blender. You can use whatever you want. I'm gonna use this because I haven't had it for that long, and I'm still kind of just trying to use it whenever I can because it's fun and it was expensive. So might as well get the most out of it. I use this thing to grind coffee these days because I just don't want to own a coffee grinder. I feel like it's just one more appliance, and we've got a bit of space, but you get a toaster, we've got like a soda stream now, and like this thing, it's just, I don't want any more appliances. I feel like I should be a bit careful with the Vitamix and hot liquid. Like, maybe I'm only supposed to fill this halfway. Maybe. I'm just gonna do it. I'll start it slow. Ooh, that's sketchy, isn't it? Okay, I changed my mind. I'm not gonna fill it this full yet. There's probably people freaking out. Like, don't do it. So I'll fill it halfway like the user manual suggests. This is why stick blenders are awesome, because you can just do it right in the pot. But it doesn't get as smooth with the stick blender, so let's just take what we can get here. So I'm using a towel instead of the plug because I want some of the steam to escape so it doesn't explode. And I'm just gonna start it low. There we go. Seems like I could totally take all of it. Okay, I'm gonna put all of it in. Okay, so I'm kind of a newbie with the old Vitamix here. Forgive me. Do you think one day they'll invent a stick blender that's as powerful as a Vitamix? Leave your answer in the comments section. Oh yeah, no problemo. That's why we bought the big model, so you can fit a big pot of soup. So I can tell it's I can tell it's a little on the thick side, so I'm gonna water it down a bit. I personally don't like soup when it's really thick like baby food. Okay. Last time I did that thing, I'm just gonna be careful. All right, so we're nice and smooth. We are, I'm gonna taste it for seasoning now. Easier to blend in some seasoning if I need to than stir it in later. Ooh, it's perfect. Love this. Okay, So I'm just gonna pour it back into the pot so it's easier to serve. I'm of course gonna take a spatula to this and make sure I get it all later. And then I'll serve it up. So here we go. So this to me is absolute perfection. The what's the word? The consistency of this, it flows. So I love Ina, but I remember watching an episode where she made a butternut squash soup and it was so thick, like it held its shape after it was in the bowl. Like it held its, I remember I was like 15. I was like, no, it's too thick. Anyway, now I get it. Like cooking shows, things aren't always perfect, but whatever. So I'm gonna bowl up a big giant bowl full here and give it a few finishing touches. So there's plenty of salt in here, but I do love a little bit of course, crunchy salt, just as a bit of a finisher. And I love peps, my good friend Pep. So I'll do a little bit of pepper there. And celery leaves, because they're so pretty and that kind of, you know, mirrors the whole celery root thing. This is like a bit fussy for me. I don't usually do things like this, but once in a while. And I always have celery leaves kicking around. It's not like they're hard to find. They're right there in the middle of your celery. You're probably gonna throw them in the compost anyway. I've got some parm, and I think I kind of want to I want to move this out of my way so I can reach better. Kind of want to just put a few like curls on, just a few kind of shards. Nice. You can grate this on. You can leave this out. This is just icing on the cake. It's parm on the soup, you know? I just made that up. Okay, last thing. Last thing is a little drizzle of olive oil, because it's just pretty irresistible not to do that. This jug is not very drizzleable, so I'm just gonna spoon drizz. Like, and that's it. I could actually just do that. You guys, look how nice. So that, to me, I mean, that was what, five ingredients, maybe less? Very easy, and that's like a pretty fancy dinner party thing. And it's also a great desk lunch thing. And it's also a great weeknight dinner. Perfect for the fall, perfect anytime. Enjoy it. I hope you like it. How am I gonna Instagram this later if I take a bite now? It's so good, you guys. Celery root soup. You should make it.